Welcome to today's episode, and today we are talking about the Madlanga Commission. Today we've got a much awaited witness who is speaking, and it is none other than Brown Mogotsi. We know Brown Mogotsi from several incidents or situations or interactions that he has had with several high-profile people. Most high-profile is the Minister of Police, Senzo Mkhunu. It is unclear at this moment if he actually had these interactions or if they were fabricated or if they are just rumors on the rumor mill. He's also seems to have had some interactions with Cat Matlala. He's definitely had interactions with Nhlanhla Mkhwanazi, who's the Provincial Commissioner of Police in KZN. This was confirmed by Mkhwanazi himself, particularly in that July press conference that he had. But now Brown Mogotsi is on the stand at the Madlanga Commission, and for a while he's been promising that he will bring some bombshells, and that he definitely did. Now, whether those bombshells can be corroborated, whether they can be backed by evidence, is a completely other story, but he has definitely revealed some very, very damning allegations. He has said quite a lot, implicating not only several people who are high profile, but also implicating himself in a few things. Now we are going to go through these allegations, starting with the first one, where he says he is a spy and that he was an informant. He says he was an informant for the SAPS, and now he is a contact agent for crime intelligence. And that was the major shocker that he started his testimony with. And in the meantime, while we listen to the rest of what he said, please do make sure that you subscribe to the channel. Also make sure that you comment. I am also on Instagram, on Facebook. I am also on TikTok as well. So the other allegations are quite a lot. We will go through them briefly. We will not assess them. We will not read too much into them. I just want you to be in the know about what he said. So the second allegation, which was very, very shocking, is that he says Nhlanhla Mkhwanazi is actually an operative of the CIA, but not only Nhlanhla Mkhwanazi, he also accuses Zulu King Misuzulu of also being a CIA operative. He says they were trained in the US for this job. And Mogotsi says that he is in charge of investigating that allegation, but he seems to really be convinced that this allegation is true. He says he has a handler, he also has a co-handler, and he says that initially he was recruited to be an informant by the late Lieutenant General Sindile Christopher Mfazi, who was the Deputy National Commissioner of the SAPS Crime Detection. And he says after Mfazi passed away, he was kept on, but he laid low for a few months or a few years. He says he's currently actively working. Now, he also spoke about Cat Matlala, and he says that Cat Matlala once told him that he had been to Nhlanhla Mkhwanazi's house. And Brown Mogotsi, before saying this, he first related a story about how he says he was trailing or following Cat Matlala to KZN, and he says when Cat Matlala got there, Brown Mogotsi himself got an Uber driver to trace Cat Matlala, which enabled Brown Mogotsi to follow Matlala. Brown Mogotsi says he followed Matlala and his wife to a house which was white somewhere in KZN, and he says later Cat Matlala would then tell him that that house belonged to Nhlanhla Mkhwanazi and that he had been to the house to ask Mkhwanazi for assistance with some of his non-payment problems that he had with that SAPS tender worth 350 million rand, which has now been cancelled. It was cancelled after Senzo Mkhunu spoke to Masemola about it, and they found that there were some irregularities in that tender. But now Mogotsi claims that Cat Matlala went to see Nhlanhla Mkhwanazi about the tender. There isn't much else that is said about what came out of that alleged meeting at Nhlanhla Mkhwanazi's home. Another allegation that Mogotsi makes is that Begicele is part of Matlala's tender, and he also accuses Fani Masemola, who's the Police National Commissioner, of also deriving some gratification or bribe, really, from that tender. According to Mogotsi, Begicele got 2 million rand out of that tender as a kickback, and he says Begicele was meant to get 10 million rand out of that tender. Brown Mogotsi says Masemola was to get 25 million rand from that tender, and that so far Masemola has received 5 million rands. Now, you'll remember that that tender was cancelled by Fani Masemola after Senzo Mkhunu told him that there could be some irregularities there. But we will not go deeper into the intricacies of that particular claim. He also claims that he once called Nathi Mthethwa, and it seems this was just a few days or weeks before Nathi Mthethwa passed away. And just to backtrack, Nathi Mthethwa passed away in France, where he was working as South Africa's ambassador to France. He plunged from the 22nd floor of the Hyatt Hotel in Paris, and he passed on. He was discovered the next day. So far, it seems this incident or his passing may have been intentional. So far, we have no concrete evidence that there could have been foul play, but Brown Mogotsi suggests that there might have been foul play. He does, however, say that he does not know anything additional to this passing outside of what's in the public domain. Nonetheless, he says he spoke to Nathi Mthethwa, and he says Nathi Mthethwa was ready to come to the Madlanga Commission to speak about his knowledge of what Nhlanhla Mkhwanazi is allegedly doing as a CIA agent. And Mogotsi is now alleging Nathi Mthethwa had the same suspicions as him. And how did he know? Well, he says he made that phone call to Mthethwa to ask him why Nhlanhla Mkhwanazi was fired as acting National Police Commissioner. And he says this is when Nathi Mthethwa informed him that Mkhwanazi was fired allegedly for being suspected of being an operative. And that is what he has told the commission so far. And obviously a lot of this cannot be corroborated because Nathi Mthethwa is no longer with us. However, the commissions did ask Mogotsi if he will have record of that phone call on his phone, which was confiscated by the police, and Mogotsi did confirm that it should be there. In the meantime, if you are here, thank you very much for joining. Please do make sure you subscribe to the channel. You can also catch me on Facebook, on Instagram, and on TikTok. Please do also make sure that you share your comments about what we've said so far about these allegations. Now we're going to move on to even more allegations also pertaining to Nathi Mthethwa. Now, Brown Mogotsi says when he spoke to Nathi Mthethwa suggested that he goes to Kenya, where he would meet a man who would then verify whether these allegations about Nhlanhla Mkhwanazi being a CIA operative were true or not. And this is when Brown Mogotsi says he went all the way to Kenya. He says he has his ticket, his plane ticket, proving that he was in Kenya. He says he has stamps in his passport proving that he was in Kenya. He says in Nairobi he met a man called George. He does not know the man's full name, and he does not believe George is his actual name, but he says George told him that there is a possibility that the allegation that Nhlanhla Mkhwanazi is a CIA operative is true. However, this is not solid confirmation, and the commissioners did test him on that, saying that does he not believe he wasted his time meeting George, seeing as he didn't get any accurate corroboration. He says that now in hindsight he realizes that perhaps he could have done this over a phone call. However, this is now what Brown Mogotsi says. From the looks of it, it says it sounds as if he says he was there for 2 days and he met George and then came back home. I want to backtrack a little bit about this. You would wonder why he went to Kenya and why he went on Nathi Mthethwa's insistence. Well, it sounds like it's because he believes Nathi Mthethwa shared the same beliefs as he did about Nhlanhla Mkhwanazi possibly being a CIA operative. Please do make sure that you subscribe to the channel and also do connect with me on Instagram, on Facebook, as well as on TikTok. And then let's also now move on to other allegations. We know that Brown Mogotsi has been very, very closely linked to Cat Matlala, and he has admitted that Cat Matlala link. However, he does not say they are friends. He does not say they are colleagues. He says as an operative, he was investigating Cat Matlala, which is why he got close to Cat Matlala. He says he speaks to Cat Matlala regularly, and he admits to telling Cat Matlala a few lies. For instance, he says that when Cat Matlala financed his trip for the January 8 with a few other people, he says he had told Matlala that he would meet Senzo Mkhunu at the January 8 event. However, when Mkhunu decided that he was not coming to the event, then Brown Mogotsi told him that they should rather meet with General Sibiya, and Matlala refused. But Brown Mogotsi says he knew that Matlala would refuse, but he wanted to give him something to go on instead of telling him nothing. He says as an operative, you never let your target down. You always have to talk to your your target. But he does admit that speaking to Sibiya would not serve much of a purpose, and he says that he knew Matlala would not agree to meet with Sibiya. And he also says that he himself met with Sibiya for the first time in Sibiya's office. And this is where he sort of implicates Sibiya, because then he speaks about how Sibiya had been to Parliament's ad hoc committee, which is also investigating the same allegations. And there, Sibiya had said that he met Brown Mogotsi for the first time at the January 8 event. However, Brown Mogotsi now says they met for the first time in General Sibiya's office. And the reason that Brown Mogotsi says Sibiya did not tell the ad hoc committee about their initial meeting in his office, according to Brown Mogotsi, is because Sibiya wanted to protect Mogotsi as an operative. It is not yet at this moment quite clear how that would protect Mogotsi's identity as an operative if Sibiya did eventually admit that he had met Brown Mogotsi. But I suppose that is an allegation that will be tested at a later period. But essentially, Brown Mogotsi did in fact insinuate, or rather he did mention, that Sibiya might have lied to the ad hoc committee, but according to him, it seems Sibiya had a good reason for doing so, and it was to keep him safe. Let's rather backtrack and talk about Senzo Mchunu. One thing that Mogotsi mentioned about Senzo Mchunu is that Senzo Mchunu was never meant to meet with Cat Matlala, and he made it very clear that in fact they never did meet. You'll remember that at Parliament, Senzo Mchunu produced an affidavit from Cat Matlala, in which Cat Matlala says he does not know Senzo Mchunu and he's never met Senzo Mchunu. That was a big bone of contention in Parliament when the MPs questioned Senzo Mchunu about why he would go all the way to prison to get an affidavit from a prisoner, and if he thought that as a Minister of Police that was a good idea. But that is definitely a whole other issue that will also be tested later. But Brown Mogotsi made it quite clear that he believes Senzo Mchunu and Shadrack Sibiya are being targeted by the camp which involves Masemola and Nhlanhla Mkhwanazi, who is allegedly a CIA operative. Now let's go to the issue of Bheki as promised. On Bheki Mogotsi says that Bheki knows Cat Matlala, and he says, in fact, Bheki was not truthful in Parliament when he said that he recently got to know Cat Matlala. Brown Mogotsi says there was an incident in which there was a presentation in which Bheki was present, and he says in that presentation, it was a presentation which was called Boko Haram, and he says the presentation was blue when questioned by the commissioners, and it seems that's what he remembers, and he says the commissioners can go and get this presentation from Crime Intelligence. But the gist of it is that this Boko Haram presentation was about a criminal underworld kingpin who's quite well known. His name is John Wick, and he says this John Wick is none other than Cat Matlala, and he says in that presentation there was a picture of Cat Matlala which Bheki would have seen, and so Bheki would have known about Cat Matlala from 2018, and questioned as to whether he believes Bheki knew Cat Matlala personally or whether he knew of him. Brown Mogotsi then backtracked a little bit, and he said he believes Bheki knew of Cat Matlala, not necessarily knew him. But he is definitely drawing a parallel there and saying that Bheki definitely knows Matlala a little more than he said in his parliamentary hearing when he was there as a witness. He also made another allegation where he said Nhlanhla Mkhwanazi, together with a few other people, wanted to get rid of Major General Khan, and they wanted to find him guilty of wrongdoing when he had a case about a truck hijacking in which Nhlanhla Mkhwanazi was actually a presiding officer. And Nhlanhla Mkhwanazi in his testimony did say that despite everything, despite the politics in the SAPS, he found General Khan not guilty. However, this is not what Brown Mogotsi is saying. Brown Mogotsi is saying that Mkhwanazi and his camp wanted to find Khan guilty. I suppose the commissioners will bring this back up because Nhlanhla Mkhwanazi was quite clear in his evidence that Khan was in fact doing his job, and that instead of being put forward in front of a disciplinary committee, he was supposed to be congratulated as he actually stopped a truck hijacking. So that is something that is a bit of a discrepancy, but it will probably be addressed later in further testimony or in cross-examination of Brown Mogotsi. And lastly, the one thing that Brown Mogotsi said, which I said at the beginning that is one of the things things that he said which implicated not only other people but himself is that he confirmed that he had spoken to Cat Matlala while Cat Matlala was in prison. Now, we all know that when you're in prison, you're not supposed to have any electronic devices unless they are authorized, and they were not authorized in the case of Cat Matlala. We saw it in the media that he was actually moved to the CMEX part of Kgosi Mampuru after the cell phone was discovered on him. But now Brown Mogotsi has implicated himself as having talked to Cat Matlala on this phone not just once but several times, and he has also then by default implicated Cat Matlala. However, we already know that Cat Matlala has been communicating on this phone. As we speak, Brown Mogotsi is continuing with his testimony, so we will get to hear more allegations today. And at the beginning of his hearing, the evidence leader, who is Matthew Charles Coxon, had asked the commissioners not to question Brown Mogotsi or any other witness who will come after him in a hostile way. Give them first an opportunity to tell their story, and then questioning will come later. So it seems the Madlanga Commission is adopting the same structure as the ad hoc committee, which is allowing the witnesses to tell their stories and then interrogate them later. So I believe tomorrow, perhaps in the afternoon, we will then hear that interrogation of Brown Mogotsi. As it is, the allegations that he is making are being taken at face value, and as South Africans, that's what we are doing at the moment. And I can safely tell you that a large portion of the country is out watching this testimony, waiting to hear who Brown Mogotsi implicates and waiting to get some answers to some of those questions that we've had. A lot of those questions have been answered. Whether the answers are going to satisfy us or not is a whole other story. But do let me know in the comment section, what do you think about this testimony? Do you think Brown Mogotsi is being truthful? Do you think he's going to get into a bit of trouble for implicating himself or not? But do bear in mind that in the Commission of Inquiry, you cannot necessarily get yourself arrested because you are protected with whatever disclosures you make, whatever evidence you make. So he just might be protected. Also, he just might be telling the absolute truth. Do tell me in the comment section, do you think Brown Mogotsi is telling the truth or not? And also do remember to hit the subscribe button. Do remember to follow me on Facebook, on Instagram, as well as on TikTok. And yeah, that's it for today. I'll see you next time with more details on the Madlanga Commission as well as the ad hoc committee.